Coming up on Locked On Dodgers, the Dodgers had a terrible, terrible series against the Royals. Started well. They won the first game. They lost the last two. The Royals, as you may know, are not good. The question is, are the Dodgers? We're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Julio Urias' unfortunate return to the rotation. And, well, the return wasn't unfortunate. The way it turned out was really unfortunate. And we're going to talk about the little bit of good news this weekend that the Dodgers have 2 more All-Stars to make 5 total. That's what's on tap. So let's get Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey, Dodger fans, this is Locked On Dodgers, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Remember, this show is free and available on all podcast platforms and on YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. Or even better, go ahead and subscribe wherever you're watching or listening right now. Then you can be an everydayer just like we are. If this is your first time with us, I am Jeff Snider. That guy next to me is Vince Samperio. Vince and I are both lifelong Dodger fans just like you are. We've also both spent time covering the Dodgers in the press box and the locker room, so we're not quite insiders, but we bring you the smart fans' perspective on our boys in blue every weekday morning. This episode is brought to you by Ibotta. Ibotta gives you cash back on hundreds of grocery items from produce to personal care to pantry goods, so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. Right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by downloading the free Ibotta app and using code MLB. And with that said, Vince, let's jump right in. It was a weekend that started promisingly enough. The Dodgers beat the Royals pretty convincingly on Friday night. Mookie Betts had a great game, 2 home runs, on base all 6 times. Just, great game all around. And then the wheels fell off. And unfortunately, the catalyst, the opening act in the wheels falling off was Julio's return to the rotation, in which he gave up, 5 runs in the first inning?
Yeah, 5 in the first.
Yeah, and it wasn't like he got knocked around a lot. He gave up 4 hits in that inning. 1 was hit well, 3 were bloop singles, but he also walked 2 guys and hit a batter in that inning. It was just kind of, I don't know, like it was frustrating, really, as a fan.
Yeah, and the entire week, I couldn't find the stat right now, but it was a stat of something like the Royals hit over 400 on balls that were like 75 miles an hour or below or something like that. Like some wild stat from the weekend that shows that like Dodgers weren't getting, beaten to oblivion. They just were getting kind of little death cuts here and there. But, goes to Julio and then Gonsolin on Sunday couldn't get swings and misses, and that's what hurt him. And then, ultimately ended up being the demise for Julio. Obviously not ideal situation. He was coming off a bad start, coming off an extended leave on the injured list, and I was glad he was coming back because it adds an arm that's like, stability, but I don't know if I was necessarily like excited to be like, oh man, he hasn't been that great so far this season. He hasn't, shown too much, and I don't know. It wasn't like, oh yeah, I think he's going to come back and be the savior. I was hoping he'd be, more than 3 innings, obviously. But yeah, it's just been a weird year for him so far. He's had a couple good starts in between all the bad starts, but usually it's, the other way around. Yeah, I mean, I guess we can take away the fact that he didn't get beat, wasn't giving up home runs, wasn't giving up, a lot of hard contact. So maybe that'll, he hadn't pitched in a month. He did only 1 rehab start. Maybe he was just getting his way back into it. But if you wanted to get your way back into it against this Royals team, would have been the way, and it didn't work out. So that's a little bit concerning.
Yeah, the Royals are supposed to be a glorified rehab start. And, it was, like you said, we were hopeful, but I don't know that either of us was confident or, it was, well, I hope that because he was really bad in his last start before, the start that he apparently he got injured at some point during that start with, okay, well, maybe he was just bad because of that start. And before that, he wasn't as good as he'd been the last 2 years, but his season numbers, if you look at him right now, they're heavily inflated by the last 2 starts, the one before the injury and this one. But what we were hoping was that he would get some swing and miss, because it's kind of a recurring theme with these Dodgers that, the relievers who struggle, a lot of the time is because they don't get enough swing and miss. Like Phil Bickford, I think, is the only reliever you could say has been bad and also strikes out a lot of guys. Like everybody else, I guess maybe Alex Vesia to an extent. But for the most part, it's like Brusdar Graterol just doesn't get enough swing and miss. Evan Phillips, the times that he struggled when he's been mostly good, but when he's struggled, it's been because he's not putting guys away. And so you've got the lack of swing and miss is a big deal, and it's been an issue with Gonsolin, like you said, and we'll probably talk more about that in the second segment. But with Julio specifically, like when he first came up, he had, I think you'd say, elite stuff. He threw hard and had really good stuff. Like the last few years, he hasn't thrown extremely hard, but he's been very, very effective, and that's a combination of good command and command of 3 or 4 different pitches, and his fastball played up because it had that spin rate that he got a lot of swing and miss, a lot more swing and miss than you would expect a 92-mile-an-hour fastball to get. And the scary part of that is that's going to go away sometime, and you would hope that it's not at age 26, but it is going to go away sometime. And so I think that's why projection systems never liked Julio very much. It's like you can only do that for so long. And I think if Julio, the way he pitched the last 2 years, I don't think it was luck. I think his stuff was genuinely deserving of those numbers because he did get the swing and miss that he needed on the fastball. And obviously one start back isn't enough to say, oh, he's broken, he's not going to get swing and miss anymore. But that was definitely the issue on Saturday, was that guys weren't missing the ball. And when you don't miss a ball, and especially if you do have, if the spin rate is enough to get them to not hit it squarely, but not enough to get them to miss it, sometimes you're going to get pop-ups that drop into the outfield, and it's the Brusdar Graterol, Kenley Jansen situation all over again. Got to get the strikeouts. And yeah, I don't know. I guess now I'm just hoping that it was just first start back, and that and the command, I think, wasn't great either. And so hopefully command could definitely be a first start back thing. Getting the swing and miss on the fastball, I just have no idea.
Yeah, and you look at his season on a whole, and he's down 1 percentage point getting the swing and miss on the fastball than he was last year, like in terms of whiff percentage. So it's not anything, and his spin is down slightly, but nothing that's going to show like, oh my God, this is bad. And even his mile per hour between last year and this year is only a 0.1% difference. So the fastball is an issue in the terms of and you look at the one thing you do notice is that you look at where he's throwing the fastball this year and where he was throwing the fastball last year, and you look at the fastball this year, and it's right down the middle. Like the reddest spots where he's throwing it the most is literally right over the plate, right down the middle. And you look at last year's, and it's down the middle to a certain extent, but it's up in the zone. And his fastball plays up in the zone because it has that spin, and because he's able to utilize it and place it where he wants to. So I think that's the biggest difference. And then you look at the slurve as well. The slurve was, he mixed it up. It was kind of all over the place, slightly over the plate, but not anything that's concerning. And you look at the slurve this year, and everything that's red is in the zone. And for him, his pitches are good, but they're not good enough to be throwing them in the zone consistently, especially when he's down a little bit in velocity, and especially when he's had some issues placing with the ball where he needs to, falling behind in count, stuff like that. So that's where the biggest difference is. If he can fix that, which is fixable, then he'll be fine, because stuff-wise, it's not that much different, and he added that cutter. So in theory, he should be a little bit better. He's just not placing it where he needs to place it.
Yeah, exactly. And, that's a good point, that, the fact that he's not getting swing and miss on his fastball doesn't mean the fastball has gotten worse. It often means, a fastball that appears to rise, if you throw it middle, it's still easy enough to get the bat on. And a fastball that appears to rise that you throw at the top of the zone, it's almost impossible to get the bat on. So it all could come down to command. And, and like you said, that does give some hope, because command, it could be rust, it could be a lot of different things, but it is fixable. Question is, will it be fixed? And yeah, we're going to come back in a minute. We're going to talk about the Dodgers as a whole. It was a rough weekend, and there's a lot of pessimism in Dodger fandom right now. So we're going to talk about that and what we think. So thanks for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen, and please keep it Locked On Dodgers. This episode is brought to you by Ibotta. Look, if you're picking up burgers and hot dogs for summer barbecue, you already know you're doing it, so why not get cash back for it with Ibotta? Ibotta gives you cash back on hundreds of grocery items from produce, personal care to pantry goods, so you can make sure you're beating inflation no matter what you're purchasing. It's so easy to do. There's two ways. Either you link your loyalty account at your grocery store. If they got a loyalty account, link that in through Ibotta, or when you're done shopping, just upload your receipt, scan your receipt, and Ibotta just gives you cash back. It's that easy. The average Ibotta user earns $120 a year. That could cover the cost of an entire shopping trip. You can bank it, take a flight that you've been, wanting to go on a vacation, whatever it is. Other apps that give you points that don't amount to much. But with Ibotta, you get real cash back that you can cash out to your bank account, PayPal, or gift cards. You can earn cash back on hundreds of online brands and retailers too when you start with Ibotta, including Lowe's, Macy's, Sephora. I don't shop at Sephora much, Best Buy, and more. So right now, Ibotta is offering our listeners $5 just for trying Ibotta by using the code MLB when you register. Just go to the App Store or Google Play Store and download the free Ibotta app and use code MLB. That's IBOTTA in the Google Play or App Store and use code MLB. We are back. We want to thank you again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. We want to thank especially our everydayers, those of you who are with us either on the podcast or on YouTube every single weekday morning or as close to it as possible. We really appreciate all of you. If you want to join that club, it's super easy. Just start watching or listening every day. We'd love to have you. We also want to remind you that if you can't catch the Dodger game on TV tonight, they open a homestand against the Pirates. If you can't catch it on TV or in person, you can always catch the hometown radio feed on SiriusXM or the SXM app. Just launch the SXM app and search for Dodgers. You can also listen to this podcast on the SXM app. Just search for Locked On Dodgers. So yeah, Vince, the Dodgers, as it sits right now, it was a rough weekend. They lost 2 of 3 to the Royals. Realistically, a road trip against the Royals and Rockies, you should definitely win 4 out of 6. Probably should win 5 out of 6. And the Dodgers instead won 3 out of 6. They won the series with the Rockies, and then they lost the series to the Royals. Overall, a very disappointing 3-3 road trip. They now sit at 46-37 on the season. The good news is the Giants lost their series to the Mets, so the Dodgers are still a half a game ahead of the Giants for second place. The Angels managed to win one of the games against the D-backs, and so the Dodgers are only 3 games behind the D-backs for first place. Dodgers still have the second best run differential in the National League, behind only the Braves, 4th best run differential in baseball. They're still like, I don't know, like, it's not like they're in last place, it's not like they're terrible, but I don't know if it's expectations or just the punch in the gut of losing a series to the Royals. Like, I wonder if everything was the same, the record and everything else, but this series loss was to the Braves, would that feel different? And I think it would, because I think losing to a terrible team like the Royals, either actually, or at least perceptive in perception, it identifies weaknesses and flaws in the team that are really easy for fans to dwell on.
And the fact that it's coming off, June 12-12, I think that doesn't help. Like, after May, we were like, oh, Dodgers are still really good. And then they went 12-12 and, okay, they're still good. I don't know how good. They need some help. They need some health, things of that nature. Because the Dodgers have lost series to bad teams every season. And sometimes they come at bad times. And, maybe this one comes at a bad time. Because, like I said, they have been playing 500 baseball for over a month now, and on this road trip they did it again, 500. So, and now they're started off July 0-2, so they're gonna have to pick back up to get to 500 now for the rest of this month. So, yeah, it's tough, and it's also like because at least offensively, they're still good. It maybe a little bit inconsistent in terms of how much they put up runs and how often they put those runs up. 9 runs, 0 runs. 8 runs, 2 runs, like stuff like that. The thing on offense is that, like, there's nobody really hurt. So that the offense is the offense what it is right now. And it's not necessarily a big issue, but there's times when it can be an issue. And then the other part is now pitching wise, you're starting to get, they got Daniel Hudson back. He looked good. His arm didn't fall off, his leg didn't fall off. That's a good sign. But they just keep getting back into this cycle over the last month where pitchers put them in bad spots. Relievers have to throw 6 innings a game for like 2 games in a series. And then those relievers start looking bad because they're throwing so much. And then, we haven't been able to catch up to a point where it's like all our relievers are clean slate. They've thrown 1 game in the last 3 games. The starters have looked good. Like, we haven't hit that point yet. And I think that it's just a cycle right now where it looks ugly. And it doesn't seem like there's a way out. There is a way out, but right now the way out is for people to pitch better because they're almost back health-wise in terms of starting pitching. We'll see what happens with Kershaw, but Julio's back now. Gonsolin's been struggling, and he's been struggling for the last 3 starts now, so who knows there. Decimay, obviously, that's a little bit further out. Pepio's a little bit further out. So, like, you were waiting for those, but that's still like a month at the very latest away. So, yeah, it's just you're kind of cycle right now.
Yeah, and we'll talk more about Kershaw probably in the next segment. But yeah, I mean, really, the bullpen has struggled, but for me, the issue is the starting pitching because, like you said, Saturday and Sunday, Julio and Gonsolin combined for what, 6 innings?
Yeah,
which leaves, luckily, didn't have to pitch the bottom of the 9th either time, so the bullpen only had to throw 5 innings in each game, and Yanni Hernandez took down one of those innings, but still 9 innings in 2 games for the bullpen. It's too much, and it is. Like, not that this bullpen would be great, but if the starters were consistently giving 6 innings, occasionally only goes 5, but also occasionally somebody goes 7. So if you were looking at an average of 3 innings per game for the bullpen, when you've got 8 relievers, you can totally take down 3 innings a game and everybody can kind of be rested. You can play your spots. You can, sometimes you'll have a big lead. And so you can put the guy who's struggling in that situation, low leverage, all that. That is how you get a bullpen on track, is by manageable workloads. But right now, the way they have to manage the workloads is by saying, okay, Justin Brule, hop on a plane again, because, we need this roster spot for somebody else who probably shouldn't be in the major leagues, and it's just, instead of having, here is our major league bullpen, and we're going to be able to manage their usage, the Dodgers don't have that luxury right now. And so that kind of has me, like, if you look at the sidebar on the YouTube, the question for this segment is, how much help do the Dodgers need? Because you've got the trade deadline coming up. And if they don't get help at the trade deadline, they're going to have to get help from their own minor league system. And for me, like, Bobby Miller, even though Bobby Miller struggled too, but at least he's giving you depth a lot of the time. Emmett Sheehan is not a superstar yet, but he's giving you decent depth, decent length. And like them and Kershaw are like the 3 starters right now that you're like, okay, well, at least hopefully we can get 6 innings today from our starter. And the Dodgers need starting pitching. And whether that's from the trade deadline or from the minor leagues, I don't know. And I mean, unfortunately, because they've already got 2 rookies in the starting rotation, it seems like some of that depth is going to have to come at the trade deadline. And we don't have any idea who's going to be available.
Yeah. And it goes to a point of, like, at the very least, obviously a top flight starting pitcher ideal. That's every year. That's something the Dodgers could acquire, and you're not going to blink an eye at it. But for now, I mean, they literally just need people that can go 5 or 6 innings. And Syndergaard was supposed to be that guy. He didn't end up being that guy. Tyler Anderson was kind of supposed to be that guy last year. He ended up being that guy and more, like, way better than that. Syndergaard hasn't been that guy. We're going to see names like Zach Greinke. We're going to see names like Rich Hill. We're going to see names like that thrown out there just because of the fact that they can throw 5 innings and they usually don't get hurt. And, it's probably not an ideal guy. Those guys were fun when they were on the team. They're way older than they were when they were on the team now. It's not a sexy guy, but somebody that can pitch every 5 days and go through 5 innings. And even if he struggles, he can push through and give you those 5 innings. And you don't really have to worry about their arms too much because they're not rookies. They're older, they're older. And, if they do end up getting hurt, you might lose a lower level prospect, but you're not any much for the worse. So yeah, starting pitching is going to be big. And, it's similar to the bullpen. If Tony Gonsolin and Julio just pitch better, then it's the rotation looks a lot better, and by that means the bullpen looks a lot better. But that's not what it is right now, and I don't know if you can count on it. And yeah, you kind of have to go out there and do something.
Yeah, and for me, like I think the big key to pitching deep in a game is pitching well. Like Tony Gonsolin only threw 81 pitches on Sunday. Pitch count wise, he could have got another inning or two, but he sucked, and the Dodgers had to try to win the game. And that didn't work out. And so, like, I don't need Zach Greinke. Like Zach Greinke could go deep in a game for the Royals because they're not trying to win baseball games except against the Dodgers. Shut up, Jeff. You know, there's a reason Madison Bumgarner hasn't gotten a sniff from a major league team because he's not good. He's not going to go deep unless you're okay with 6 innings and 47 earned runs, So I'm not interested in Greinke or Rich Hill. I'm interested in, obviously I'm interested in the good starters. And if those guys don't become available, then yeah, maybe we do, go with another minor league starter and, somebody who's built up. And because if you can get 6 innings and 4 earned runs, that keeps you in a ball game. Even 6 innings and 5 earned runs. I don't need a guy to be a superstar. 6 innings, 5 earned runs. That's a 7.5 ERA. But guess what? 6 innings, 5 earned runs can give the Dodgers a chance to win a game. And that might be Gavin Stone. Like if he's built up, I don't know who it is. Maybe it's one of those AA starters, but yeah, they definitely need pitching help. And I honestly believe, even though the bullpen gets deservedly, they've been bad, but I think, like you said, a better starting rotation is the answer to a better bullpen in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
All right. There was some good news this weekend. In addition to the 3 Dodgers who were voted to start the All-Star game, they got 2 more added on Sunday. We'll talk all about that and what that might mean for Clayton Kershaw and all that. So thank you again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning, and please keep it Locked On Dodgers. We are back. Thank you again for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. We want to remind you again, if you want to catch the Dodgers hometown radio broadcast for any game, including tonight's series opener, homestand opener against the Pirates, you can do that on SiriusXM or the SXM app simply by searching for Dodgers. I also want to thank you again for being an everydayer. If you are, if you're not an everydayer, just listen or watch every day. It's a fun club. You can, what else was I going to say? There was something else I was going to say, if you're watching on YouTube, love to hear your thoughts in the YouTube comment section. If you're listening on the podcast, we'd love to hear from you through email or social media or whatever. We promise not to rate limit your DMs or your ats. No promises on who else might rate limit them, but we'll give you all that contact info at the end. We are not, there's lots of ways to get a hold of us, even if Twitter dies a slow, painful death. So, you can always get a hold of us, and we will always be here for you every weekday morning. Last topic, the Dodgers now have 5 All-Stars. In addition to the 3 starters, Mookie Betts, Freddie Freeman, and JD Martinez, who were named last week. The pitchers and reserves were named on Sunday, and Clayton Kershaw and Will Smith were both added to the team. We were 100% sure that Clayton Kershaw would be added to the team. We were 100% sure that Will Smith deserved to be. I did talk the other day about reasons why it might not work out. And really it came down to he needed to be voted in by the players, and he was. Turns out the player vote and the fan vote was very, very similar on a lot of different positions, including the players vote. Sean Murphy won for National League catcher, and Will Smith came in second, just like he did in the fan vote. And so he is officially on the All-Star team. So is Clayton Kershaw. Smith, I don't know that there's much to say. Kershaw, I think there's a lot to say. I mentioned this on Twitter. I wonder if the reason the Dodgers have delayed putting Clayton Kershaw on the IL was just to make sure he was named to the All. I don't know when the player vote actually happened, but I wonder if there was some sort of gameplay there of like, well, if Kershaw's hurt, then guys aren't going to vote for him, And so let's make sure Kershaw is healthy, at least in public perception, until after we have the results of the vote, and then we'll put him on the IL, and he'll take a couple weeks off and come back, the first series after the All-Star break. I don't know if there's some of that, but I am happy to see Kershaw on the All-Star team, and I think there's roughly 0 chance that he pitches in the All-Star game.
Yeah, I think you're giving players a bigger benefit of the doubt than they deserve. In that, like, I don't think they're checking who's on. Like Jordan was still up there; he hasn't played in like all the month of June. So, but either way, I mean, they could have been. The Kershaw thing, just the last like few days, like, oh, we don't know yet, and like, oh, Kershaw's supposed to start tomorrow, but he hasn't thrown off a bullpen, or didn't throw a bullpen, hasn't thrown yet, and it's like, okay, realistically, it doesn't look like he's gonna pitch, like, but whatever. I mean, like I said, I think at this point, even with all we just talked about starting pitching and everything else, I think the Dodgers can get through this last week and maybe give Kershaw a little bit more rest than he needs to. He still gets the accolade, 10th time being an All-Star with the Dodgers, ties who Pee Wee Reese, I think, I said, for the most in franchise history. So that's cool. He would have been on track to be considered for the starter in the game, but again, if he doesn't pitch, I don't think that happens, obviously. So, but yeah, I mean, yeah. So for Will Smith, good. He made it. He finally made it. He deserved to be on there. They took 3 catchers, so even the Rockies guy Diaz did end up pushing him off. And Real Muto, even though he's not having a terrible year, and usually is the big fan guy, the fans and players got it right this time.
Yeah, and it was it was a good thing. I was glad because I think if yeah, I talked the other day about the possibility of having to have a catcher from some team on the All-Star team, and that could keep Will Smith off. So I was glad that they did take 3. They also took 3 in the American League because Salvi Perez had to be the Royals representative. I'm not a fan of that. Every team has to have a representative. I understand it. I think Major League Baseball needs to decide what they want the All-Star game to be, because if it's an exhibition, fine. And it is good that they stopped tying home field advantage in the World Series to it, because then it was really just like split personalities where it's an exhibition, but also you really, really, really got to win. And also it's like, how much motivation does a guy playing for the Royals have to make sure that the, Yankees get to have home field advantage of the World Series or whatever it is. So, still either if it's just an exhibition, say, okay, put the guys who deserve to be All-Stars on the team. Okay, what teams don't have them? Now let's add somebody for those teams. And if that means the National League has 37 guys on the roster and the American League has 34, so be it. It's not like it doesn't matter. So I think that's what they ought to do. But as long as I get my Dodgers on, I am interested to see when inevitably Kershaw either goes on the IL or at least announces that he's not going to pitch in the All-Star game, so he's going to be replaced. Will it be Evan Phillips? Because I think Evan Phillips deserves to be on the roster, and some of that comes down to who was next in the player voting. But hopefully Evan Phillips. Kershaw won't be the only pitcher to drop off, and hopefully when somebody drops off, Evan Phillips gets named to the All-Star team when we get our 6th All-Star.
Yeah, I mean that's one thing. Like the Orioles had their closer and the other guy both make the roster. So, Phillips is the Dodgers' best reliever. He hasn't necessarily been their closer, quote unquote, but I think now he's falling more into that role and picking up those saves that people look. That's the stat people look for when it comes to All-Stars and stuff. So yeah, he deserves to be on there. Hopefully, he does end up making it. There's going to be a few, at least on the AL side. There's already a few injury replacements that are going to happen. NL side, we'll see what happens. I know, Kershaw for sure if he ends up going on the IL. But yeah, I mean, 5 All-Stars. The Braves have, I think, 8 guys going to the All-Star game. So there's between the Braves and Dodgers, there's 13 players just right there. So yeah, it's tough to always get guys. But yeah, I think way you said, if you build out your rosters and then you add somebody from every team, that's a little bit different. It's kind of funny because Miggy Cabrera was the special commissioner's pick last year, and then realistically they should have just done him again this year, because Michael Lorenzen made it as in the AL side, and his ERA is 4.38, and it's just all right, well, we're pushing All-Star, but I guess Lorenzen will probably have some cool Vans cleats or something, and he'll get some attention on that.
Yeah. All right, well, I think that does it for today, right? You got anything else?
And now back home, the Dodgers are the reason they're over 500 is because the record at home. So hopefully they take care of business this week.
Yeah, hopefully. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen every weekday morning. Thank you, everydayers, for being with us. Remember, you can catch the radio broadcast on SiriusXM or the SXM app by searching for Dodgers. You can find us on Instagram and on Twitter at Locked On Dodgers. Vince is on Twitter at VinceSense91. I'm on Twitter at Snydog, and the DMs are open in all of those places. Our email address is lockedondodgers@gmail.com. And our phone number for voicemails or text messages is 323-863-LOCK, 5625. We are here every weekday morning. We hope you'll be here with us. When you get in your car or sit on your couch, tell your smart device to play podcast Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. We'll talk to you tomorrow.
Have a good one.